Okay. I'm hoping everyone is back. I'm going to start very briefly with a quick aha in my group, and then I'm going to ask the other facilitators to share from their group. We had a very lively conversation. You know, the piece with this that seemed to strike folks is, yes, it's great that we now have this scientific evidence about skin color. And one of our participants pointed out that very gently in the presentation, you know, it was mentioned that skin color should never have been used to categorize people and judge them in a way that had the negative social consequences that it did. And another really wanted us to think about before it's important to know that, yes, we're all one human family, but there has been consequences to this notion of races. And so racism has become very real. And we need to not just rush to, we're one human family, without also speaking to what has happened in terms of the social consequences. So I'm going to call on Renee. Would you like to tell us quickly what happened in your group?
Yes, actually what I would like to do is to have Juliana speak for us. She was familiar with this material ahead of time and has experience teaching children. So Juliana, if you could speak for just a minute or two, we'd love to hear you.
I'm so excited about this. So excited. I'm an elementary librarian, and I've been working on this. I know Nina, the woman who's doing this, the scientist. My husband has worked with her he was one of her colleagues. So we've known her since these books, her information came out. So I was just saying, they were asking what I do, and I start with things like maps, the maps we were seeing, and these concepts, and I can put a few books in the chat, but we start kindergarten with this. It's so important so that children just grow up and they have the concept of the biological, the scientific concept, and they have that basis. And it seems to work really well. So
thank you. Thank you. Linda?
So in the framework of accompaniment and consultation, it from my group, it is also important for us not to just say we're one human family, but to exhibit and support each other to being one human family. We have to encourage each other, as well as give each other the same opportunities, and I'm gonna put it in my own words, the same love as we extend to other members of our community, so that it comes across as being equitable. So.
Thank you. Eleanor, what about your group?
The group had the words of awe, gratitude, very good learning, astonishment at God as the fashioner of the universe, and search. These are the things that were brought up for people when seeing this amazing scientific work. Mm-hmm. And just the wonder and astonishment of God's plan for humanity. That was balanced out by questions about social constructs that people have created for their own advantage, and also social constructs that are more neutral. And thinking about those. What are social contracts that cause great damage, and what are more neutral, and how to use this information in support of social justice and the oneness of humankind. And thinking also, very excited about using these videos in our communities, sharing them with family members, the ongoing work of relationship building relationships with people in the conversations about racial unity.
Thank you. Thank you, Rita. Did I forget anyone in our group?
So our group spent a while
Khela.
talking about where did this social construct come from, reviewing the information we learned in the ABR course, and we shared links with each other, which I put in the chat to share with all of you. Nikki again pointed us to the video from the course where the first use of the term white occurred in law, as in a miscegenation law. And yeah. Is it a good time for me to?
I was just about to say, okay, now that we've gotten those, I'm gonna turn it over to you to do the last part.
All right. We left off, we had just learned about vitamin D being the reason that we lost our pigmentation when we left Africa and went to more polar regions of the planet. So if you go looking for how does one obtain vitamin D, you might end up with some sort of graphic like this that mentions things like there's vitamin D in milk and tofu and orange juice and yogurt. Actually, all of those foods are fortified with vitamin D, which means they take this stuff, right? And they sprinkle it in the food. It's not naturally there. So if you want to know where vitamin D naturally occurs in nature before we invented powdered vitamin D, we end up with something like this. Can I get a volunteer to read the top 20 sources of natural vitamin D on planet Earth? Digestible by humans. Volunteer.
Halibut,
Ellen.
eel, mackerel, rainbow trout, sockeye salmon, swordfish, fish roe, tuna. I can't see the other four. Chicken fat, herring, lard, bacon grease, pork spare ribs, eggs, beef liver, turkey.
All right, yum.
Salmon.
No, just so summarize for us, if you had to give us a high level category, where's most of that vitamin D?
Fish.
Fish. All right. Okay, so the video very, very briefly mentioned people on Earth who have a very high diet with lots of fish in it. So they're eating all their vitamin D. They don't need any from the sun. What happens in this situation with their skin color? Does anyone remember, or can you think of, is there any population on Earth historically that ate just a ton of fish?
The indigenous people of Canada and Alaska.
Yeah.
All right, and do they live in the polar regions?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so people, let's say in the polar regions of Russia, what color is their skin?
It's darker.
It is?
Brown.
If you're in like Great Britain or Northern Russia, what color is your skin?
Light,
Yeah, pretty
very
pale.
light.
Well,
But
there's in northern Russia, there's darker, the indigenous are darker.
Ooh, what are they eating?
The Russian indigenous in the polar regions?
What is that you're mentioning with darker skin in the polar regions? What are they eating?
Fish, blubber.
All right, here's a picture of indigenous Alaskans. And you'll notice to the right, I have a picture of a polar bear. If you shave a polar bear, their skin is actually almost black because they're eating the fish too, just like the humans living in the polar regions. They don't need to get vitamin D from the sun either. So for the exact same reason that humans get darker to protect themselves from UV light and keep their folate nice and healthy, the bears and the humans who have enough vitamin D in their diet will redevelop dark skin even if they live at the poles. This folate correlation is so strong, humans redevelop dark skin if they're getting enough vitamin D in their diet. So I've encountered the work of this educator. Dr. Sharad Paul is a dermatologist, native Indian guy who moved to, what's that island by Australia? New Zealand. He's in New Zealand now. Great storyteller. He's got books. He's got podcast. He's got YouTube videos. All that's in your resources. I'll give you at the end. But Dr. Sharad Paul has lots of interesting things to say about skin color. He mentions how we started with black skin and dark brown skin. We leave Africa in the equatorial region. We start to lose it. And then we remigrate places closer to the equator, like back down to his subcontinent in India. Indians, depending on exactly where they are and what they're eating, have just as dark skin as Africans for the same reasons, the same folate vitamin D matrix that we encountered previously, right? However, the Indians didn't have nearly as much time, evolutionary time, to adapt to having dark skin at the equator. And one of his claims is that Indians actually have lower vitamin D levels than Africans. I don't know how to verify this fact, but he said Africans have fantastic vitamin D levels. They've had so much evolutionary time to adapt to having both dark skin and needing to absorb the vitamin D that he goes so far as to say this is why they're winning all of the track and field races in the Olympics, is because vitamin D makes you have strong bones and muscles, and recover very quickly from athletic activity, which is what you need in track and field races. He also says,
Khela, can I say something about India though? India,
yeah.
in North India, the people have lighter skin than in South India. So there is, right? I mean, there is evidence of that.
Yeah. They also have different color skin depending on their caste. And one thing Sharad Paul points out is that even historically, if you go look in the early written records, there's pictures like Brahmin person, light skin, lower caste person, dark skin. He goes over this in some of the lectures I cite if you watch them. He says, what would have caused this? He says, he goes back and says we're back to the vitamin D folate hypothesis with this caste system with different color skin, because the higher caste people are following these religious rules that say you're supposed to be a strict vegetarian. And where's all the vitamin D? It's in the meat products, it's in the fish products. So the lower caste people that are eating the meat and the fish get enough vitamin D in their diet that they're healthy enough that they can have the darker skin. And the higher caste people are not getting the vitamin D in their diet, and they lose their pigmentation in order to absorb it from the sunshine. He's a really interesting guy. I highly recommend looking into his work if you're at all curious about this. What else do we have to share with you here?
Khela, did you have some slides that you were going to be showing us?
Oh, can't you see them?
Oh, okay, got it.
Here's those two maps again from the video, if you want to stare at them for a minute. I find it, you can see here, so this is down below, you have the UV slide that that George Chaplin created from the NASA data. And you can see the bright red here on the equator in Africa has the highest UV on the planet, along with Malaysia. And only parts of the Amazon, because of the cloud cover in Brazil, a lot of the forested land in South America is not super high in UV, even though it's right on the equator. You can see how it kind of rings around by the coast. And the one other little blip to notice is right here in China. Do you see that little blip of dark? That is the Tibetan highlands. Tibet, because of its high elevation, has higher UV and darker skinned people than if you walk straight east or west.
Aboriginal people of Australia are very dark though, and I don't see the red there.
And I don't see the dark on this map either, and I completely 100% agree with your commentary. That's one of my outstanding questions is, why is there not a super dark blotch in Australia with the native populations, given how dark their skin is? I need to look into that. I don't know the answer.
Well, a lot of the Aboriginal people in Australia are also refer to themselves as Torres Strait Islanders. You know, so they actually are more, or historically, you know, concentrated more in sort of those northern island areas, and then, you know, and probably migrated then down from there, from Australia. I mean, from the Torres Strait. I don't know, that might explain.
Oh, from other parts of Malaysia. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if we look at one of these time lapses, humans moved into Malaysia between 50 and 60,000 years ago. And here's a map with some arrows. So we left Africa, we moved to the south part of the Asian continent, and then came down through these islands on boats very slowly as we're migrating, and ended up in Australia. So that's a good hypothesis. I wonder if that's right.
Khela, could I ask you a question about folate deficiency in people who are lighter skinned?
Oh yeah.
Because if you have melanin and that's protective of your folate, which obviously can decrease reproductive issues and mutations, contrary-wise, people who are lighter skinned have more of a folate deficiency and hence anemia.
Is folate related to anemia? I didn't know that.
Yes, yeah. It can cause what's called a megaloblastic anemia.
Oh.
People who don't have enough leafy vegetables, same thing like vitamin B12. If you don't have enough of that, you can get this type of anemia. Just a question. Thought that maybe that came across your.
I will look that up for next time. I have no answer for you now about anemia and folate. However, I do have a study to cite by Dr. Sherrod Paul, compared birth defects between a dark-skinned population and a light-skinned population. He wanted to ask the question, if we develop dark skin to make sure we don't have birth defects in the first place, and then some of the humans lose it when they move north, would they redevelop those birth defects? What do you guys think? Yes or no? So he compared a population of new mothers and their babies in a suburb of Belgium with good healthcare and lots of white people to a slum in Bombay with very little to no healthcare. And who had the higher birth defect rate, guys? Belgium.
Folks.
With all the healthcare. This is why. Okay, so final science question of the day. What does it mean that I'm holding a folic acid and a vitamin D supplement in my hands for our life on the planet now. We have humans moving all over the world with all sorts of different skin colors, living in places where they were not evolved to be, right? Interrupted someone. Go for it.
Climate change.
Climate change.
In that pollution, less sunlight reaching people's bodies.
Ooh, I didn't think about that. Yeah. We got to make sure to get outside enough, get enough sun, soak it up.
Well,
But
regarding the folic acid, it's also a sign that very likely at a population level, we are not consuming enough plants, that our diet is skewed. It's not what we are meant to eat. If we eat enough vegetables, enough plants, we do get enough folic acid. It's when we start having a diet that's very high in animal-based products that we start having those deficiencies.
eat your vegetables. That is always true. Yes.
There's actually, you're probably closing. There are studies though that show that the very wealthy, who are the ones that are embalmed and found in the pyramids and the mummies and that, those aren't the common people. Those are the wealthy people. That the birth defects of babies born to very wealthy Egyptians, like the malformation of the spine and such, indicate that mother did not consume enough plants. Because if she had, then the baby would not have had that malformed spine that they had found. So in other words, it goes back. Human beings have always, the wealthy people have eaten all the animals and the poor people have eaten the plants, but the plants are really healthy for us.
Ooh, I like it. Excellent. Yes, and the fact that I'm holding these in my hands means we now have the freedom to live anywhere on the planet and stay healthy if we eat the right amount of fruits and vegetables and supplements and yes. So we're no longer tied completely to our local environment, our diets. We live in a new world full of technology where we can take control of our destiny with using just by taking vitamins.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're getting toward closing time. I've put in the chat that tiny URL link, links to a cloud folder with all of the goodies. Feel free to reach out via email to me for any reason, questions, more on this topic, whatnot. And especially Jeanais, myself, Renee, and others have been working on a course for youth on positive Black identity and anti-racism topics. If anyone around the country wants to reach out and ask about how they might get their youth in their local community access to our awesome course, reach out and I will hand it back to Jeanais.
I hope you all found that to be a very interesting presentation. I know that it was something that I enjoyed the first time I heard Khela share this information. And I'm so glad that many of you were able to come out. We try to do these presentations every 3 to 4 months, these gatherings. And so I hope for any of you that have taken the course and you're doing something that you feel would be interesting to share with others, please, the next time we send out information, we'll definitely like to hear from you. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us. Khela, you had mentioned you had one other thing that you wanted to share with people. Is that still the case?
I have a game if anyone wants to stay on after we formally close.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. So,
a game that uses all the information you learned today just to cement it in your brain and have some fun.
Okay, but for those who have to leave, I will bid you adieu now. And for any who wish to stay on, please hang around and let's see what else Khela is going to share with us. But thank you again for joining us. Have a wonderful afternoon or evening, depending on where you're located.